Hmm. Oh, I'm live. Sorry about that. I looked up in the right hand corner and I saw something that said in the broadcast, and I'm like, no, I'm trying to start it. this is this is Lydia Ford, back again to talk to you a little more as I continue my journey towards my certificate in grief counseling. My grief counseling business is called Grace to Win. And last week, I did several, I think I did about three pre recordings about grief, reactions that one experiences when they go through grief. And I focus on different types of feelings. But before I go further, I want to make the distinction between the definitions, because sometimes we get it twisted. We don't quite understand it, and I want to make sure everybody understands these three words. We have the word grief. When we're talking about the loss of a loved one, we use the word grief. We use mourning, Mouring, and we also use bereavement. So I want to go back, and I know I've spoken about this. I had given that definition again or before, and I want to give it again so that we're clear on what we're talking about. Again, this is Lydia Ford. I help people who are stuck in grief to get unstuck, and I am in pursuit of a certificate program in grief counseling from the American Academy of Healthcare Professionals. Okay, the American Academy of Health, or I should say the American Institute of Healthcare Professionals. I have one more class to take, and then I will get my certificate, and I'm very excited. However, prior to even taking a course in grief counseling, I have a firsthand knowledge of grief and loss, and I've done many teachings, many Facebook Lives on the topic of not just the death of a loved one, which is mostly what all of us are familiar with, but I also in the past have talked about other types of loss as well. But let me not linger. I want to talk about, I want to define three words that are associated with the loss of a loved one. The first one is grief. Grief is the experience of one who has lost a loved one through death. Okay. And it is grief expresses itself in thoughts, in feelings, and behaviors and other psychological changes. Now, last week, I dealt with 12 types of feelings, 12 kinds of feelings, because that's one of the way in which we express grief. We express it in how we feel. So we talked about sadness is a grief reaction. We talked about anger, blame, guilt, fatigue, helplessness, anxiety, loneliness, yearning, and emancipation. And so grief is expressed in feelings. Now let's talk about what mourning is. Mourning is the term that's applied to the process that one goes through in adapting to death of a person. Let me say that again. When someone says this person is in mourning, what they're talking about is that they are going through the process of grief. All right. It's the process that one goes through in adapting to the death of a person. Okay. Let me go back. Grief is the experience one who has lost a loved one through death. And that experience manifests in thoughts, feelings, and behaviors and other psychological issues. So I hope we got that straight. Grief expresses itself in thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Mourning is the term applied to the process that one goes through in adapting to the death of a loved one. And then we also use the third one, bereavement. Bereavement defines the loss. The bereavement defines the loss to which the person is trying to adapt to the death of a loved one and the experience of having lost someone close. Bereavement defines the loss to which the person is trying to adapt and the experience of having lost someone close. Now that I have clarified that, hopefully, today I want to focus on uh, physical sensations that grief can cause, physical manifestations that grief can cause. I'm trying to keep it short. I could go on to something else, but I want to try to keep these kind of short, so it gives you time to go back and listen and to reflect. So when we talk about physical manifestations, we're talking about behaviors, okay? Physical manifestations. One of the interesting things about one of the researchers whose name is Linderman, he did a paper. Okay, one of the things about his paper is that he describes not only the emotions or the feelings that people experience, but also the physical sensations associated with their acute grief reactions. These physical sensations are oftentimes overlooked, but they really do play an important or a significant role in the grieving process. Physical manifestations, physical sensations play an important part in the grieving process, according to Linderman, who is a researcher in the area of grief and loss. Here is a list of the most commonly reported sensations or manifestations, physical manifestations experienced by people that we see or people that we work with in grief counseling. Now, the first one I actually had to look up and get a little more understanding of it. It's called hollowness in the stomach. When your stomach is hollowness in the stomach. And as I was looking that up, I came across what the meaning of that what the meaning of that terminology is: hollowness in the stomach. Anytime you go through a life stage, or you go through a crisis, you go through a death or a situation that might require you to reflect on yourself and your life, this hollowness may cause a feeling of emptiness. All right. A feeling of emptiness. A feeling of emptiness can signify some mental health conditions such as depression, bipolar disorder, or PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Hollowness in the stomach is not uncommon for acute or immediate stress to make you lose your appetite completely, to suppressing hunger. It may be your body's way of focusing your mind on just trying to survive. And if stress continues through your body, it may produce what we call cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So hollowness in the stomach can be a grief reaction that responds to a life changing situation like the death of a loved one. It makes you reflect on yourself and your life, the things that are happening, the things that are really depressing you, making you feel sad, and it can lead to a temporary feeling in your stomach area of being empty or void. Okay, so when we talk about that physical sensation, I tried to describe it the best way that I could. Hollowness in the stomach. You feel a sense of emptiness there. Sometimes it can result in digestive tract issues. Okay, then we talk about tightness. There's a tightness in your chest. Sometimes upon hearing about the death of a loved one, the first thing that sets in is denial and panic, which can actually cause sometimes people, not everybody, to have a tightness, almost like they feel like they're going to have a heart attack. Tightness in the chest. These are physical sensations, physical manifestations. And again, there are 9 of them, but not everybody experiences all 9. Okay, so hollowness in your stomach, a feeling of emptiness that makes you reflect on the circumstances at hand, the crisis, the pain, the numbness that you're feeling. And then tightness in the chest area. Then there might be even tightness, in your throat. You're trying to get the words out. You're trying to articulate, what you're feeling. You're trying to articulate about the news that you just received, and you might experience a tightness, almost like a choking sensation, like you're about to, swallow your tongue, or, you're so choked up with emotion, it's hard to talk. So it might be feeling a tightness even in your throat. You might experience oversensitivity to noise when you're, going through or experiencing a physical sense of this physical sensation related to the death of a loved one. If your loved one maybe was hit by a car or truck, or if they were in an airplane crash. I'm trying to think of other scenarios, and all of those things: a crash, airplane, an airplane crashing, a car accident, anything related to a sound that will trigger your remembrance of how your loved one died. You might have an oversensitivity to noise. Okay, if they had an accident at the house, the garage door, fell on them. They were under the car fell on them. Any type of noise that triggers a response of anxiety because you recall that that's how that person died, or they were in a really horrific kind, even a hurricane or a tornado, just hearing the sound. I've never been in a tornado, don't want to be in one either, but just hearing the sound of the tornado come crashing into your house, and the roof may have blown off, or debris fell on the individual and that person died, but you escaped. Anything that triggers a remembrance, any type of noise triggering a remembrance of how your loved one died, you can have oversensitivity, so that every time you hear that noise, it triggers the remembrance of how your loved one died. Okay, we're talking about physical sensations. Here's another one: a sense of depersonalization. For example, I walk down the street and nothing seems real, including me. We call that a sense of depersonalization. It's like you're outside of your body. You're walking, but you have no sense of reality. You have no sense that, this is really the plot, this is really going on in your life. It's a depersonalization. Walking down the street, nothing that you see in your immediate environment, nothing seems real to you, and you don't even seem real. Okay. And then we have breathlessness, or feeling short of breath. And I'm certain that many people feel a sense of your breath being just snatched away when you hear about the death of a loved one. It just feels that, you stop breathing because you are numb, because you are in shock, especially if you have multiple losses. There are whole families that could get wiped out in a hurricane or a tornado. There are whole families that can get murdered or shot in a terrorist or a murderous escapade. And certainly that type of situation can leave you breathless or short of breath. And many times you, in your hurry to get away from the circumstance, especially if there's a terrorist in a school or in a nightclub or whatever, you running away from the scene can also leave you breathless, short of breath, or just seeing a lot of dead bodies laying here or laying there can make you become breathless, short of breath. We're talking about physical. These are real physical manifestations that people, not everybody, but a whole lot of people go through these types of manifestations. Then there's weaknesses in your muscles upon hearing the death of your daughter, the death of your husband, the death of your one of your siblings. It makes you weak in the knees. It's not just love that makes you weak in the knees. It's hearing devastating information too. The loss, the death, the murder, the suicide can leave you weak in the knees, weak in your muscles. Lack of energy is number 8. It takes a long time to get back on track, to get back in life. Sometimes getting up is not even on your mind. All you want to do is sleep, because sleep is a place of escape. You don't want to do anything. You just lack energy. You don't want to cook. You don't want to clean. You don't want to do your hair. You don't want to put on no clothes. These are real physical sensations that many people experience in the loss of a loved one. And then finally, the last one, number 9, is dry mouth. Trying to keep your mouth irrigated. One of the things that you need to do is drink a lot of fluid. And I'm not talking about pop or soda pop and, sugary substance. You need to drink a lot of water when you are in mourning, when you're in going through different grief reactions. You need to stay hydrated. All right. And so that's another manifestation, dry mouth. And a lot of times when you are going through the process of mourning, especially in the first few days, in the first week, maybe first 2 weeks, you do a lot of talking. Not everybody, because some people just break off and they don't want to be bothered. But a lot of people, and you have to, there's some talking you have to do. And so that can cause you to have dry mouth. So you need to be hydrated, drink a lot of water, or chew gum, or eat mints, anything that will keep the moisture in your mouth and in your throat, because you're going to have to do a lot of talking. You're going to have to do a lot of explaining. Sometimes you're going to have to give direction. You're going to have to talk to the funeral director. You're going to talk to your pastor. You're going to have to talk to people that are coming in town to be with you, to support you when, during that whole week. And then even after that too. So stay hydrated so you won't suffer from dry mouth. All right. So these are 9 physical sensations that a lot of people go through when they have experienced the death. I see one comment up here. I want to make sure I don't leave anybody out. When you experience the death of a loved one, we talked about hollowness in the stomach, a sense of feeling empty. All right. Which can signify, now we're talking about normal grief reactions here. I'm not even going into abnormal or complicated grief, but a lot of times you feel a sense of emptiness, hollowness. And so it can come on as a result of stress. All right. You can lose your appetite completely. And then some people just suppress hunger. They don't want to eat because they don't feel like eating. All right. And that's one way of your body. That is one way that maybe your body is one way of your body focusing your mind on just being able to get through the day. All right. Just plain old survival, suppressing your hunger. All right. Or your sense of emptiness. Is a duality there. All right. So those are the 9 physical sensations: hollowness in the stomach, tightness in the chest, tightness in the throat, oversensitivity to noise, a sense of depersonalization, breathlessness, feeling short of breath, weakness in your knees and your muscles, lack of energy, and dry mouth. Many times these physical sensations are of concern to the survivor, and he or she may come to the physician, your doctor, for a checkup. And if so, physicians, doctors need to inquire. If you're having these sensations, doctors need to inquire about deaths and losses as a part of their diagnostic evaluation. All right. The first thing, though, whenever you do have a close death in the family, you need to contact your PC, your primary care doctor. They need to know. Don't wait until these physical sensations just start to happen and turn up. Let your doctor know what has happened, that you've experienced a death in your family, a very close death, and you may need his help. You might need his assistance in getting through, especially the first few days after you hear about that person's death. You might need, to have some medication for stress. You might need to have some medication for sleeping in the first few days, or maybe the first month or so. Make sure you let your primary care doctor know what's going on. And if you are a cancer patient, you definitely need to let your oncologist know. If you have issues of where you have a doctor, I'm trying to think of the name of the doctor as good as I know, but any specialist, heart doctor, definitely. You need to let your heart doctor know that you're going through the death of a close family member. All right, PC, primary care, heart doctor, your oncologist, orthopedic doctor, definitely, kidney doctor, any specialist. They all need to know that you're in a crisis and that you may need to come in. You might need a prescription refilled so that you can just get through the day. All right, get through the first week, get through the funeral, and then get through the burial. And even after that, you might still need some support for these physical sensations associated with grief and loss. All right, I'm done, and I will be back. I will be right back to talk about some other types of grief reactions. I want to talk about cognition. Cognition is related to your thinking. All right. I'm going to talk about disbelief. I'm going to talk about confusion, preoccupation, a sense of presence. We call it hallucinations. Those are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's related to how you think about the death of your loved one, because it's very important. Okay. I'll come back and I'll talk about that. And I may take 2 at a time. I may talk about, when people are in disbelief and the fact that there can be a lot of confusion associated with the death of a loved one. But I'm going to give it to you in bits and pieces so I do not overwhelm you. And again, this is Lydia Ford. My grief counseling service is called Grace to Win, because I want you to win. I want you to understand and know that your purpose and God's plan for your life is never, ever, ever tied to anything that you've lost. Nothing in the rear view mirror. He doesn't waste anything. And so he doesn't want you to waste time thinking about your losses. And sometimes we are so tied to the person that we have lost because of a role or position, a title that they played, that we don't even see the future. My counseling service is Grace to Win, because I want you to win. I don't just want you to cope, with the death of the loved one. I don't want you just to merely survive. I want you to thrive. I want you to adapt to living, knowing that that person is not coming back. And so you have to, your relationship with with your loved one that has gone, that has died, has to be different than it was when they were alive. I help you with that. I help you to adapt to life without that person. But I remind you also that your identity is not tied to anything that is in the past. Any person, thing, okay, person, place, or thing. Your identity is tied to your creator, the one that knows everything about you, your beginning, your end, the one that knows the plan and the purpose he still has for you. It's in your future. It's not behind you. So if you need a grief counselor, you can contact me on Facebook. under Lydia Ford. You can go to www.thegrace2win. It's the number 2. And everything is scrolling at the bottom of this screen on StreamYard. You can go to my website, and there's a place there where you can sign up for a 30-minute free consultation so that we can evaluate you and see whether or not you are a candidate for grief counseling. I have 3 months, 6 months, I believe 9 months, a year counseling. It depends. After we talk, that'll give me a chance to assess and as to how much time you may need. You might think you just need 3 months when you really do need 6 months, or you might need a whole year, but we can determine that as we go through. Also, there's some payment budgetary things there as well. I'm willing to work with people's budget so that they can really get the help that they need. Okay, again, www.thegrace2win.com. You can contact me on my website. Remember, that's a 30-minute free diagnosis. We can talk to you and assess where you are in your grief walk. All right, so thank you for listening, and I will be right back. And then I will do another live, and then I will do some other recordings so that you can, go in my page. You can go on my YouTube channel, which is Lydia Ford International Ministries. And if you're not a subscriber, you can subscribe. The more, the merrier. And you can always go back and see these Facebook Live or these, StreamYard broadcasts for your learning. All right. Talk to you later. Be right back. Bye.